Today's question is, what's the worst thing you've seen at a wedding?
Outdoor summer wedding in TX. The groom's 90-plus-year-old grandmother died during the reception. They found out when she couldn't be roused for family pictures. Oh God. My boyfriend's oldest brother's wedding. One of his mates got plastered, lost control of his bowels, and shat himself. In a kilt. Picture the scene. On a dance floor at a working man's club in Glasgow. A drunken 40-something standing by himself in an ever-expanding circle of people looking at him in horror whilst an equally expanding puddle of shit gathers on the floor. On his calves. On his shoes. Yeah. Edit to add. My boyfriend remembered something which I had totally forgotten. When the shit began to hit the floor, the groom looked over, saw what was happening and shouted, "For fuck's sake, Mick, get to the fucking toilet." The drunken shitter wailed back, "I can't move. It's coming out too fast." The boyfriend compared it to watching a cow laying out a cow pat. Yeah. The pastor went through and updated the bride's name in her script, but didn't accurately change the script for the groom. Sometimes he was John, others Matt, occasionally Mike. The groom had to say, "My name is Steve," when the pastor said, "Repeat after me, I, David, take you." I used to be a wedding registrar. I conducted one wedding where the bride's father had passed away the year before. The ceremony was held outside in a venue's walled garden. Upon entering the garden to take their seats, the guests were met by a skeleton which was dressed up in the father of the bride's clothes and asked to shake his hand. It was an overcast day, had rained earlier, but weather was clearing up. Bride and groom went to take some photos after the ceremony. A kid, probably 6 or 7, unsupervised, ran up to a puddle the bride was carefully walking past and jumped in it. Her dress had mud splatter all the way up to her shoulder. I felt so bad for her. I told this story in a different thread the other day, but I feel like it also applies here. A friend of mine caused some drama at her own wedding because she wasn't drinking champagne. A bunch of the older ladies on her side of the family noticed and decided the only possible explanation was that she was hiding a pregnancy. They started pointing it out to anyone who would listen, even going so far as to say they see a little bump under her dress. I guess these family members weren't close enough to the couple to know two very important details. The bride is a recovering alcoholic. She doesn't drink, ever, not even at her own wedding. The bride and groom had been trying to get pregnant for probably 2 years at that point, and were starting to be resigned to the fact that they wouldn't be able to have kids. This was eventually confirmed, but they did not know this at that time. My SIL told us about a wedding she was at where the bride and the groom's mother did not get along. The groom was a work mate of my SIL's husband, and all the work friends knew there was some tension between the two, but did not expect anything to happen. The ceremony went off okay. Groom's mother gave a few killing looks, but nothing was said. At the reception, she started drinking and making comments to her relatives and friends, loud enough for other people and the bride to hear. The groom spoke to her, and she quietened down. During the toast, she made loud noises every time the bride's name was said, but she was mostly ignored. She kept drinking and moving around, talking to different people while the dancing was on. She was sitting at a different table when the bridesmaids brought around pieces of the wedding cake. She told them she didn't want any. Bridesmaids said she would just leave some on the table for the people who were sitting there and put some on the table. Groom's mother shouted, "I told you I don't want any fucking wedding cake," and with that swept the pieces of cake off the table with the back of her hand. Cake landed on the chief bridesmaid, who shouted back. Groom's mother jumps up, slaps the bridesmaid, and then other people join defending their chosen side. My SIL had seen this all happen and was eagerly watching from the sidelines. The groom and his best man stopped the music, stopped the brawling, and split everyone up. He said, "That's it. Wedding's over. Thank you all for coming. And Mum, I never want to see you again," grabbed the bride by the hand and walked out. My SIL's husband decided it was time for them to leave in case things kicked off again. I was a groomsman at my friend's wedding. At the reception afterwards, after everyone was jolly drunk, I happened into the bathroom and found the groom's college roommate and some random guest in a loud argument. Lots of "you don't know me" being thrown around. I didn't give a fuck. I went into a stall, and when I came out they were locked into an embrace and rolling around on the floor wrestling and screaming. I went right in to try to break it up and got pushed back. So I went into the main hall and tried to find the groom's brother to help me out. Finally found him. The random guest was now in the lobby and fighting another random guest while a bunch of people were gathered around. Brother ran into the fray, and I thought, shit, I'm going to need more, so I grabbed the groom. By the time we got to the fight, it had moved outside and there was a big crowd now. Same guy was fighting. Seemingly, everyone was hurling insults. I saw the guy's girlfriend run off to her car. Groom and I went in to break everything up, and there ended up being a mosh pit. Another groomsman's wife got hit in the throat by a can of beer, causing the groomsman to fly into a rage. I ended up having to hold him back. Eventually, the guy's girlfriend drove over and dragged him into the car. She started driving off, and that could have been the end of it, but nope, some idiot had to throw out a racial slur. Guy opened the door on the moving car and rolled out and went right back into the crowd. It only ended when the groom's brother and another guy dragged the instigator out to his girlfriend's car, and he only got in because there were sirens approaching. This guy fought damn near the entire wedding on his own. My niece was having a morning beach wedding, followed by a reception on the roof of the hotel most of us were staying. About 40 guests total. It turned out she'd done no planning at all besides thinking, gee, I'd like to get married on the beach, and renting chairs and a little bower/gazebo. No permit, no idea how to get elderly guests over the 100 yards of sand. All of that. We all get there and have to schlep the chairs down to the water, set up the damn gazebo, and pay off the lifeguards not to rat us out. The bride arrives late, and her car gets stuck in the sand. So 2 groomsmen carry her down. The only thing that saved the reception is that my sister, the bride's aunt, is a genius and figured that if the ceremony was that much of a shit show, the reception might also be. She snuck off and called the hotel, discovering that the bride had indeed reserved the roof, but not made any provision for food or drink besides one case of beer and 2 small cheese plates for 40 people expecting lunch. Being both a genius and totally generous, she got the hotel, on no notice at all, to add a bartender, a waiter, and an open bar, and called a Chinese restaurant and begged them to make catering-sized dishes of fried rice, egg rolls, and a couple of other things, and deliver them ASAP. I had some good playlists on my iPod that long ago, and got the bartender to hook it up to the hotel speakers. At the end of it all, and I have to admit that despite all odds it was a pretty good time, the bride's only comment was, "See? It turned out perfect." I drive a cab, was hired for 4 hours to provide transportation from the reception at a rural winery to various hotels, houses in town. Got paid a fixed amount for the hours, plus tips. Usually works out pretty well, even though the hours are not what I prefer. Most guests were pleasant, tipsy, funny, but near the end of the night, 2 a.m., the wedding party came out, the bride first, being basically carried by her bridesmaids/friends. She was using her feet, but not very effectively. They set her down on a bench near my cab, and she sat with her head down near her knees while they fetched the car to take her and her newly minted husband wherever they were going. Just as the car pulled up, the groomsmen came out with the groom, literally dragging him, toes down, through the pea gravel on the path and through the parking lot. I have, somewhere, a picture of the grooves in the gravel from his no longer so shiny patent leather shoes. The bridesmaids came back to get the bride as the groomsmen poured the groom into the car, and when they started jostling the bride, she puked in her lap. I'm just pleased they didn't ask me to drive the happy couple. Why do people get so incredibly drunk at their own wedding? I mean, if you're going to get shit-faced at a wedding reception, do it at someone else's. Former limo driver here. Story time. It was early 2000s, Lakeway Inn, which is or was at the time, a very pricey resort. I'm hired along with 2 other drivers to chauffeur the bride's party, and the groom's party are being chauffeured by my colleague. Everything is smooth on the way in. We pick up a big Spanish family, everyone is drinking casually, and my limo bar glassware is being used along with the ice I provided. We take the guests to the wedding, nice affair. We see there's a band performing, think Gypsy King style of music. Within 2 hours everything is over, and we're supposed to carry them to a reception back in Lakeway. I have the bride and groom in my limo, driving on the road. Along with the bride's mother, add the groom's mother and other assorted family. I don't speak much Spanish, but all of a sudden, "China tu madre" was said very loudly, followed by other loud screaming and then a sound of a very expensive wine glass being broken, which is when I pulled over the limo and proceeded to yell furiously at this wedding party for being possibly violent drunken assholes, letting them know that Noon was getting stabbed in my car. Apparently, he grabbed a bridesmaid's ass or something repulsive during the ceremony, causing mass chaos. So after we sat on the side of the road for a brief minute and I collected all of the glassware, I proceeded to take them back to the hotel. Once we get there, the groom tries to stiff me for the ride, and I remind him how prepaying works and that I'm not going to be mad that he hasn't tipped me yet either. The bride's family tells him a thing or two, so he leaves in his Porsche 911, speeding down the road. I knew this wasn't going to end well for him because Lakeway is notorious for speeding enforcement. Sure enough, a few minutes later, on my way out, I passed by a Spanish gentleman being arrested for speeding on the side of the road by 2 Lakeway cops. I would have warned him about these cops had he tipped me, but alas, I would brag that I saved someone from being stabbed that night, but really I just didn't want to clean up any mess in that clean limo. My boss would have killed me. And this is the end of today's video. I hope you liked it, and don't forget to comment an anecdote or experience similar to the topic of the video. Leave your like, share if you like the video, and lastly don't forget to activate the little bell so you don't miss any of our daily videos. Bye bye.